you think about writing more than once a day, more than likely you're a writer.
What does it take to be a Hollywood writer? What does it take to be able to do your craft, collaborate, and network in Hollywood? Ooh, well, today we are talking to two very successful writers in Hollywood who are breaking down all the little tips and tricks you need to know. If this is your first time here, my name is Lydia Nicole, and this is Acting Smarter Now. What makes a great script?
Ooh, it makes a great script. It's a bit of a recipe, Lydia. It's a bit of good story, really developed characters, but it's being able to craft something that connects universally to an audience. And no matter what genre your story lives in, if you can find the place that speaks to every experience, whether that's love, pain, loss, overcoming, heartache, it doesn't matter if you're a cowboy or a spaceman, it speaks to someone. So there's a lot of good ingredients that go into making a good story great.
What comes first for you, character or story?
Character, 100% character. Let human nature surprise you. Let people's stories surprise. There's nothing that annoys me more than cookie cutter characters and stories based on, I don't know, sort of these notions or the ideas of people. I want to be and create characters and create a world where anything you feel as a white character, my BIPOC characters have that space, but it's really building and constructing both worlds that are rich and full. I mean, not everybody in The Porter is a lovely human. My lead is problematic. You know, our lead, Junior Massey, is a problematic man in terms of his ambition choices. Zeke is a different person, but is he less of a person to kind of cheer for? No, I get you, but you're doing some problematic things. And I'm okay with those characters because they are fully constructed and realized. And so we are asking if you're going to tell these stories and can we be fully constructed and realized in the stories that you construct about us? And we will do the same.
What advice can you give a young person who or an older person who wants to write and wants to write in Hollywood?
Right,
Right.
right. The inroads to Hollywood have changed. It used to be standard, pilot season's coming up, you write some specs, you try to get representation, or if you have representation, you get your representation to get you some meetings, and you take your spec and you try to get on whatever. But the game has changed so much. My top three are: number one, be versatile, back to that creative portfolio. Mm-hmm. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Have a comedy spec, have a dramatic spec, be willing to try different avenues. Also, have a thick skin, because get used to rejection, because it happens.
How important are specs?
I think you come to a certain point in your career, at least I have. My last spec was a Roseanne.
But in the beginning.
In the beginning, very important. It's your calling card. It's your example that you show that I can write, that I do understand what this process is, and I can do it. It's your calling card. It's very important. And it has to be pristine. It has to be really well written, have other eyes on it. I mean, just even typos and grammar, especially if you're a writer of color. Don't give them any reason. Oh, well, they can't even spell, whatever. And so don't give them an excuse to turn you down.
Two things that I learned that stuck with me early in the game: writing is rewriting. That was number one. And writing is a daily appointment. And if you cannot keep it, you need to find something else to do.
We pitched a lot of material. Here's the process. You, as a single writer, as a team, you would pitch anywhere from 10 to 50 ideas a day. Sometimes we were having 3 pitch sessions a day because we were just eating through material. And Fox's censorship standards were so much tighter and restrictive back then. So we couldn't do a lot of things we wanted to do that were very funny. But anyway, so you pitch the ideas. The head writers would go and they would pick the ideas, and Keenan, whatever, they would pick the ideas that they wanted to see drafts. They'd come back and go, all right, we want you to do Jesus and Butthead, even though it was pitched by somebody else. You know, you get on that. That thing you pitched, do that. This pitch that he pitched, I'd rather you do that. So it was very much them kind of strategizing strengths. Mm-hmm. Like they knew that Sonia and I had a very, you know, we loved doing the music videos. We had a very strong grip on doing the music parodies. And so we often got assigned to those. Now, once you do the draft, they may come back and go, okay, that's good, but we're going to have so-and-so do the rewrite on it, or so-and-so to punch it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it was very collaborative.
The process is different for me depending on the project and the phase. When I write for myself, I write differently than when I am staffed to write on a series or on a film. For myself, let me speak to that. I've been a lot of years writing, so I've studied, I went to school for film production. I've studied scripts like, you know, young athletes study their favorite player, you know, and there was a time where you could name the script, name the writer or the production company, and I could tell you everything that they had done and all the genres, but it was my business to know about structure and act structure. And I took the seminars, all kinds of ones that were great and ones that were not so great, and studied screenwriting. So I learned the building blocks of the craft, and I wrote sort of according to those. I didn't turn in 140-page feature scripts. I didn't turn in, you know, 50-page, half an hour specs. I learned basically what was expected. And then for myself now, after years of that, I'm able to break the rules in a way that I am comfortable with, because in the back of my mind, that is such a strong muscle, the hows of the writing, that if I want to do a one page and jump into script, I do that because I know where I'm going. If I am staffed to do something, it's a different process, because people pay for the phases. So they want to see the outline and they want to have their input. They want to see the treatment, which could be from 10 to 30 pages, and they want to have input, and there's revisions all along the way. If it's a TV series, you know, you're in the room, depending on if I'm running or if I'm staffed or if I'm producing or consulting. It is a collaborative experience. And that was a difficult transition for me, because I started in features, which is very solitary in terms of the writing. And all of a sudden you go from only child to who are all these people in my room with all their ideas and thoughts.
We were the girl writers.
Okay.
And so the very first thing that I learned is that there is no respect for girl writers. One of my heroes is Madeline Pugh Davis, who was the co-writer of all of I Love Lucy's shows and everything that Miss Ball did. She was, and her autobiography is called Madeline Davis, Girl Writer. And a lot of the challenges that she had, we experienced as well. The sexism was off the charts. We were regularly, I don't want to use the language, but we had a nickname by a particular head writer, who I will not name, Les Firestein. He called us the cunts. Mm. Hey, cunts, come on in. We're going to the writer's room. You know, what are you cunts doing? That was our nickname. And I was so naive and so young in the business, I did not realize that was unacceptable. I thought that was, you know, normal.
Yeah. Because as a woman, you don't want to make waves. You just ride it out.
I mean, I had given up. Let me tell you what I gave up at KCT. I was tenured there, if you will. I had a pension fund. I had a retirement plan. I had full health benefits. And and they loved me there. I could have stayed there. I had a fellowship to WGBH in Boston. They sent me to do this fellowship in marketing. I mean, they were Team TFA, and I could have stayed there. I could probably still be there today. So it was a big risk for me to take, to leave that job and go into a training program that might last 13 weeks. Mm-hmm. So when these things would happen, you know, as you said, I didn't want to rock the boat initially, but eventually I rocked the boat really hard. Jay Phillips said to me once, he said, "Damn, Tifa, you write like a dude." And I was like, "Thank you." And I was like, "Hey, wait a second. What's that mean, you write like a dude? Like writing like a guy is supposed to be the standard of greatness and excellence? No, I write funny is what I do."
Comedy writing is one of the hardest things to do as far as a writer goes.
It's the hardest.
Because you got to be funny. You can't just think you're funny, but not be funny.
Mm-hmm.
So when you write something that is, it's crafted for comedy, but it's not quite there, how do you punch it up? What is your approach to it?
To making a joke better?
Yes.
Well, the first thing you have to know that comedy is very subjective. And so what whoever's giving you the note, you know what, this isn't quite it. I don't really think this is funny. I don't think our audience will get it. Then you have to really go back and think about that audience and then try to come at it at a different, what did I miss? If I'm doing a show for a church and this is like a really base example, and the pastor comes and goes, "Well, you used profanity in it, it's for a church." Well, obviously you go back and go, okay, take the profanity in it and still make it funny. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You just have to really know who
the audience is.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time killing my darlings, so I put them in a cradle off to the side of the screen. What I do for my psychological well-being is I put it in it's whatever the script title is called. It's like that bits is the name of the folder. So if it's like ABC bits, and so I put that little thing that I love and I just cut it and I throw it in the folder. I'm like, just in case I need it, it's there. It hasn't really been deleted. I can go pull it out but I think 99% of the time I do not go back into that folder. If it's cut, it stays cut. The one time you actually do, it's probably a line or two or something.
Be open to exchange ideas and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And listen. We as storytellers, we see it in our heads. We
Right.
know what we want it to look and sound like and all of that. But be open to the other person's opinion. They may call you, show you something that you never even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of it.
We as Black creators and creatives have often been in the space where we felt we had to censor ourselves or rein it in or, not to, but to be in a space where you can speak and be understood. Even, I say there's not one experience. So I'm from here and they're from there. And some of them grew up in Canada and some of them came over and some of them were more mature writers who've been they were new, older writers. And I was like, new writers aren't all 19, they bring in. So for me, it was a challenge, but it was a challenge worth taking on because, I will never forget to sit in this room and say, look around this table. I've never seen this in my life.
So much history that we don't know, and which is why it is so important to be a storyteller. It is important to be a writer of color, to share the history that we are denied knowing about.
I remember one particularly painful meeting where it was very clear that this man wasn't going to hire me because I was Black. It was for Lonesome Dove. If my spec script was good enough to get me in the room, and then I walk in and you go, "Oh my gosh, my agent." I told my agent, I said, "You need to start telling people I'm Black," because it kept happening. I would come in and they go, "Oh, okay, we didn't know." One development guy told me, he goes, "Well, I have to tell you, we have reached our quota on minority writers." What do you mean you reached your quota on? But anyway, be that as it may, I couldn't get arrested after a living color. You would think I could not get arrested. This town is all about relationships. It's not just about who you know, but who knows you. And I hate that part of it, but it's the reality of what it is. You know what I mean? Every job I've gotten in this industry is because somebody knew who I was. Understand that your journey in this industry is not going to look like anyone else's. So don't compare. Don't compare your work. Don't compare your journey because you'll stay frustrated and discouraged if you do.
I used to tell people, "Oh, this is my first draft." That was never my first draft. This is my draft 6 or 7, you know what I mean? And done the work, did the thing, went to the story editor. So some people want what you have fought for years for in a single meeting or a single encounter. Hook me up with your agent, hook me up with your manager. It's like, how many scripts do you have? Where did you shop them? Where did you study? Did you shoot a short? Did you do this? And it's like, no, they want what you have sacrificed for years for without putting in sweat equity is what it takes. It's a lot. And God bless it if you are born into it. My mom worked in healthcare. My dad worked in a factory. I had no nepotism available to me to get me through those doors. So you got to make sure you are ready for that opportunity. And if you are asking for someone's time, you are asking for their money because their time is valuable. Do not waste it with unpreparedness.
What I learned was to maximize my opportunities, maximize them by diversifying my creative portfolio. I heard Stacey Evans Morgan say that once. Diversify your creative portfolio. So I determined that, you know what, not only can I write comedy, I can also write drama. I can also write books. I can also do stand up. I can also write jokes for other comics. It's like all these skill sets. And so then I started creating this brand, T. Faye Griffin. That's when Words by Faye was born. Became Words by T. Faye eventually. But I became this entity that if you needed something written, funny, humorous, inspirational, whatever, you need a speech, you need a press release. I've been writing Sherry Shepherd's bios for almost 15 years. I read every time she needs an update of her bio or rewritten bio. She hires me to write her bio. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I just started because I never wanted to be on welfare again, and I never wanted to lose my hold in this industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I wanted to be a player, but if I'm not staffed, I still got something going on that was at least loosely in the business related to what I do.
I made a decision on what paying dues looked like to me very early on in my career. I went to film school. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 Black students who were in the program at the time. And I think 3 of us graduated the program. And the road was, well, you intern, you PA, you climb up the ladder, you work the really good. And I was willing to do all of that, climb the ladder, do this show, do this. So I was doing these different trips. My goal was I will take any job that will let me write, because I knew that was my road. So any job that would let me write. And I remember working on a TV series, and it was very popular in Canada and the United States, but one of our executives was not a great human, was really having some issues around, but that was kind of overlooked and tolerated. But I remember the one day this person could not locate their lunch, which was not my responsibility, but they were so angry, they threw a cup that smashed over my head at my desk. And I remember looking up, and all these adult heads looked back down as if they didn't see it. It didn't happen. And I got up from my desk. I started to gather my things, and I walked out. And I remember my boss chased me down to the parking lot and said, "No, it's okay. You know how they are. You just have to pay your dues." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't have to pay that. That's not that. I don't have to pay that, actually. So I'm just going to find my own way to this thing." And so that was the last production job I took for a while. I took a lot of not fun jobs, and I was an emergency dispatcher for an alarm company, and I worked the midnight shift because I could write. You didn't get a lot of calls in the midnight shift. I was an agent assistant. I was anything that would let me write, because I decided I don't mind working long hours. I don't mind if you're rude. I don't mind but you do not have the right to physically assault me or attempt to do so or degrade me. And that is in my DNA, inherited from my mother, who's like, "No, you are a child of God. And when you know God, it's like, who do you bow to? No one. No one." So you are respectful to everyone, but you bow to no one. So, it took me a while to win the Nicole Fellowship, but I took every job. So I think you have to decide, what does paying your dues look like? It looks like long hours. Sometimes it looks like low pay. Sometimes it looks like lack of acknowledgement or recognition, but it does not look like abuse. It
Right.
does not look like denigration. It
Right.
does not look like sexual violence or assault. It does not look like any of
Or
those
harassment.
things. Or
Or
harassment.
harassment.
That is not paying your
Mhm.
dues. That is abuse. And we
Mhm.
need to, like, people talk about the Weinsteins and all, but we have all known monsters roaming freely in
Oh,
our
yes.
industry. And the culture needs to shift to say that is not acceptable behavior.
Keenan, a couple of times, kicked all the writers out of the office for the day. He says, I want you to get out of this office. I want you to go sit in the park, go to the mall, go to the movie, go live some life today, because you cannot write from a vacuum, from a void. And so, what you're saying is absolutely, you have to have a well of experiences and thoughts and philosophies to write from, and you cannot get that from just reading something or going to a conference or a webinar or whatever. Those help, you know.
Yes.
And I do continue to grow and to learn from other writers and so forth and so on. Aesop, Hans Christian Andersen, these famous writers, they wrote from a wealth of observation. Aesop paid attention to an ant one day, and then he wrote this story. He paid attention to a tortoise and a hare, and wrote a story that we're still telling hundreds and hundreds of years later, simply by staying in the moment and observing life and taking it in and experiencing it. And I believe that, writer, you write here first. Television especially does such a disservice to creativity because everything's so formulaic. We know that we got 26 minutes and we need so many jokes per page, and these characters do, and you just kind of, it's like template writing. It's like, I'm just filling the template. We know this character's going to do this. But beyond that, there's this whole world that you can create.
Right. That's the challenge for writers. It's like you have to listen. You have to come in and saying, you have to set your own anticipation of who they are and what they should be, and then come back with these stories that are rooted in something deeper, because you know how to set your expectations aside and come in with open heart and open ears, whether or not the notion of who and what they are offends your personal moral sensibility. That's got to sit down for a second. You don't abandon it. Obviously, there are people who are doing horrible, terrible, despicable acts in the world, and those are not to be condoned or supported or celebrated. But if I'm telling it's the story of that person, I'm telling it in its completeness. And that requires my listening with every part of my being.
That was really good information. I'd love to know what tips stood out for you. Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, buy me a latte. And don't go anywhere, especially if you want to know how to write your very first pilot. We got all the information for you right now.